Well, and certainly we did see China make some headway, even if it's on its own terms, with Zambia and the restructuring of that debt. It wasn't a reform per se, but I think that they've basically lengthened the terms of those loans. China just seems to want to make sure that it's going to get paid back regardless. There's not a debt forgiveness model there.
Yeah, and that's just one of the issues that China needs to be involved in. So developing country debt, climate change, dealing with pandemics. These are the sort of issues that the G20 needs to deal with. And in order to tackle them, China needs to be fully involved. And that really does mean Xi Jinping attending, given that he's amassed so much power within that country.
Where's the leverage here, James? And maybe we can even put that question to Siddhant. I mean, where's the leverage here to get China to come to the table if it just decides it doesn't want to be there?
Yeah, I think that it's pretty hard to say that there's a lot of direct leverage. Instead of leverage, it's more persuasion, really convincing the Chinese that the G20 is not against them. The G20 can serve the interests of China and the rest of the world. And so more persuasion rather than leverage, I think.
Thanks, James, for joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for all your inputs. It was a pleasure talking to you as always.
Thank you.
Siddhant, I'd like to come back to you. You're there very much. I want to pick up from where we left off last with the warm hugs. And of course, give us a flavor of what's the environment like over there and, what's coming up next on ground.
I think I should have started counting the hugs because I saw another hug that was with the Brazilian President Lula. Exactly. Both countries, of course, part of the BRICS grouping. But essentially, when it comes to this multilateral event here in Delhi, a lot of opportunities for a number of bilateral as well. The Indian Prime Minister has 15 bilaterals and a lot of engagement. In-person meeting is something that most of us, in fact, all of us missed during the COVID time. And as the world opens, summits are norm now, and as the summits meet, there will be more hugs, warm hugs, and of course handshakes as well. Important to know that the only time the G20 could not meet in person was in 2020 when the Saudi Arabians were the host and the meeting happened virtually, and then thereafter the summits again started to happen in person. First was the Italy summit in Rome where 6 leaders were not present. Last year it was Bali where of course the Russian president wasn't present, but the Chinese president chose to go there. He had a lot of meetings including a kind of a pull aside with the Indian Prime Minister. He isn't here this time, but I can say that not many are missing him. But it was given as well that whether the Chinese will be coming or not, because essentially we know that there are many reasons. There could be domestic reason, there could be the ongoing tension between India and China, or maybe how the Chinese have been not so very helpful when it comes to ongoing talks, when it comes to the joint statement.
There's clearly a united sentiment regarding China. I won't say anything more than that. I just got news that Li Qiang has made way to the venue. Were you able to get a glimpse of that? Yes.
No, Siddhant, I think of you now as a G20 encyclopedia. What's your prediction on Li Qiang? Do you think he'll get a hug from Prime Minister Modi?
Well, I don't think so. I can bet on that. I don't really think so. I believe that there will be just a handshake and, essentially when it comes to leaders conversation. In fact, if the Chinese president would have been here in Delhi, everyone will be keenly noticing the body language between the two leaders. We saw both the leaders having that small conversation in the BRICS Summit in Johannesburg. Before that, it was in Bali. But essentially, amidst this tense relationship, any in-person meeting, the visual is something that is the only thing we can interpret, or the officials saying that there was some conversation as to how the relationship can be normalized. But I really don't see India-China relationship getting normal very soon.
Molly, I'd just like to come to you next. You're very much there on ground. We've had a nice, good chat with Siddhant regarding, he's been observing everyone's body language very, very closely. Anything more that you've observed you'd like to share with us?
Well, let me just first give you a sense of the kind of hectic activity that we have witnessed among the media delegations as well. Where I am right now, we've of course seen every minute of the visuals coming in from the Bharat Mandapam being dissected here by the media delegations who have gathered here in New Delhi from around the world. In fact, in my chat earlier with a journalist just a short while back, they were talking about how the very fact that you're talking about the chemistry and the body language of each of the leaders here will be assessed and closely monitored, because that in itself is a major part of the messaging. But that aside, the optics being very important, the very fact that India is playing host to the G20 Summit and what it means for India's position on the global map, and also what it means for India's global stature, given the fact that India has made those concerted efforts to find also a bridge between the G7 and the global south, the so-called global south. And that has been a major part of the responsibility that India has been shouldering. And it's a very difficult challenge, to say the least, to try and emerge as the voice of the global south, to ensure that their challenges do not go unnoticed, to ensure that their voice is equally heard, if not more. And the very fact that their issues have been finding a lot more prominence already is a huge indication of the way India has focused on this aspect as well. And just to also let you know that in a short while from now, we will see the first session of the G20 Summit kickstarting.
Molly, we're getting visuals of Joe Biden making his way in. We'd just like to cut across to those visuals now. Joe Biden and his convoy is in. Jessica, of course, I will be able to recognize people over here, in the convoy. He's making his way from his armored vehicle. He steps out.
The beast.
The beast.
Yeah, there's President Biden, and he's accompanied in these talks, of course, by Secretary Yellen, who's not seen visually there, but Secretary Blinken and the Deputy National Security Advisor, John Feiner, as well as the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, in these talks. Let's see what kind of body language we see here. I suspect it will be quite warm.
It will be warm, for sure.
I mean, past his prologue.
Definitely. I think that there's no surprise. There won't be any surprise springing up over there. We are seeing world leaders coming in one after the other. And Joe Biden has now, of course, there was one entry that was being anticipated the most. And there he is walking in. We'll be meeting the Indian Prime Minister, I think, in a few steps from now.
Takes off his sunglasses.
He's inside now.
There we go.
There we go. And he's walking in. And there he is. I think he spotted the Indian Prime Minister and should see some kind of a change in body language and facial expressions soon. Of course, I think seems to be checking out the arrangements inside.
Favorite color of Jill Biden, the blue of the tie there.
With the American
dress
flag.
To impress.
Yes, he's been dressed rather sharply all throughout, as always. And there you go. He comes in with the salute, and you know who he is saluting to. And a big smile on his face. You can see it through the dark, even though there's lesser light. Buttons up his coat and is ready for a formal meet-up next. A bit of a fumble. Oh, there is the handshake with the Indian Prime Minister.
There we go.
The photo op follows, as always, a little bit of an exchange of words and big smiles on both leaders, as expected. The Prime Minister Modi showing him all the decorations around and the decor that's been put up. G20, Bharat 2023, India, Vasudev Kutumbakam, world is one family. All of that written right above them, both leaders exchanging words. A longer conversation here, as I see most. Goes to show the warmth between the two nations as it's brewing.
But this is something White House officials have been remarking on. Obviously, there has not been always a warm relationship between the U.S. and India. It's really warmed in the past few years. It's gone from distrust to much more trust. And I think you're seeing that be achieved in the personal relationship between these two leaders as well.
And it was interesting to note that how, he was walking in and you knew exactly, the camera was panning at him, it was not showing the Indian Prime Minister, but you knew exactly that he has the Indian Prime Minister inside because his smile, it said it all. And of course, he greeted him with a salute. And I think I counted 3 handshakes there in a matter of less than 2 minutes. There was a longer exchange of words. We can have the visuals again, if from inside. and a warm meeting as expected.
Yeah.
And the bilateral meet which happened just hours ago, of course, is all a lead up to the way. There we go. This is him entering, and we'll of course replay the visuals for the viewers, showing them, how evident it is that he is happy to be in New Delhi, and of course in the Indian Prime Minister's presence, meeting him shortly.
Significant too that the only bilateral meeting that President Joe Biden has is with Prime Minister Modi during this season.
Absolutely. And